The alien cruiser loomed above Trelith, 9 like a dark blade cutting through starlight, its hull alive with faint ripples of blue energy. Every sensor on the Vanguard tracked its movements, yet the KRYL Dominion ship radiated an unsettling calm. Commander Rhea Voss stood at the main tactical console, her arms folded tight across her chest. The room was silent except for the hum of the fleet systems and the steady pulse of her own heartbeat in her ears. "Open channel," Captain Darren Holt ordered, his voice sharp. His steel-gray uniform was immaculate, his posture unwavering despite the threat hanging over them like a guillotine. The comms officer tapped a key, and the bridge lights dimmed as the alien signal filled the hollow projector. Admiral Sarexvar appeared, his elongated face covered in iridescent scales that glistened like molten glass, his eyes narrow and predatory. He regarded them as one might study insects behind a pane of glass. "Humans," Sarex said, the word dripping with disdain. "Your presence here is an offense to the Dominion. Withdraw or face erasure. These primitive war machines of yours will not protect you." He tilted his head with a mocking grin. "I see your crude projectile weapons. How quaint. Do you plan to throw rocks at us?" Rhea's jaw clenched. She leaned closer to the captain, muttering, "If arrogance could kill, we'd be dead already." Holt shot her a warning look, but didn't reprimand her. The Admiral continued, his tone sharp as glass. "Your time in the stars is over. Submit, and we may leave your colonies intact." Rhea's hands curled into fists. Crude? Throwing rocks? They'd spent years refining mass driver technology to a razor edge, crafting weapons that hurled slugs faster than anything the KRYL thought possible. Yet to them, humans were nothing but apes swinging metal sticks. "Channel closed," Holt said, his tone flat. The projection dissolved. He turned to Rhea. "Thoughts?" She exhaled through her nose, forcing herself to stay calm. "He thinks shields make them untouchable. That arrogance is the crack we exploit. We run simulations on their shield harmonics. Our railguns could punch through if we find the right angle." "Could isn't good enough," Holt replied, though not dismissively. His voice carried the weight of a man who'd seen too many battles end in tragedy. "We're outnumbered and outgunned. We fire first. We risk starting a war we can't finish." "They'll start it for us," she said, voice low but firm. "Sarex isn't bluffing. He'll pick off our escorts one by one, just to prove a point." The captain's eyes lingered on her for a moment. "You want to test Thor's hammer, don't you? Better than waiting to be vaporized." At that moment, the comms officer's voice broke the tension. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Independence. KRYL ships are moving into attack formation." Holt gave a slow nod. "So they've made their choice." Rhea turned toward the viewport. The KRYL fleet formed a crescent, their ships sleek and elegant, glowing like blades dipped in firelight. The Vanguard's escorts, a handful of frigates and a destroyer, seemed fragile by comparison, their armor plates heavy and dark. It was David against a dozen Goliaths. The captain motioned her closer. "Walk me through your plan." Briefly. "Thor's hammer is loaded," Rhea said. "One shot. Kinetic slug. 10 tons of depleted tungsten. If we accelerate it to 12 kilometers per second and hit their aft shielding, we might pierce it," Holt finished, his voice a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "Not might," she said. "Will. Their shield design is layered for plasma, not physical impact. They've never faced anything like our railguns." The captain's expression softened. "And what happens if it fails?" Rhea didn't blink. "Then at least we show them we won't bow." Silence settled over the bridge as her words lingered. For a long moment, the hum of the ship felt louder than it should have. Holt finally sighed, stepping back toward his chair. "For now, we hold fire. We don't make the first move." Hours passed like drawn wire. The KRYL remained in position, their ships circling like predators. Rhea reviewed diagnostics, ran calculations, checked and rechecked targeting vectors. Each time she looked up, the alien fleet still hovered there, mocking them with its sheer presence. A sudden tremor shook the Vanguard. Alarms flared red. "Report." Holt barked. "Energy spike from KRYL flagship," shouted the sensor officer. "One of our escorts, Frigate Stalwart, has been hit. Rhea's chest tightened as the view screen showed the Stalwart tearing apart in a bloom of fire and debris. Pieces of its hull scattered like sparks in the void. Hundreds of lives, gone in a flash, erased without warning. "They're not waiting anymore," Rhea said through gritted teeth. "Captain, let me take the shot." Holt stared at the destruction on the screen, his jaw tightening. Sarex's voice came through the comms once more, cold and gleeful. "Your fleet is brittle. I give you one chance to leave before I turn your flagships into wreckage." Holt didn't respond to the Admiral. He turned slowly toward Rhea, eyes hard but calculating. "If we fire, there's no turning back." Rhea met his gaze. "There's no turning back now anyway." The captain hesitated, just long enough to make her stomach twist. Then he nodded once, sharp as a blade. "Prep Thor's hammer. But I want every variable checked. No misfires." "Yes, sir," she said, already signaling the gunnery crew. The bridge filled with activity. Technicians confirming magnetic coil alignment. Engineers feeding power into the rail system until the ship's deck plates vibrated faintly under their boots. As she monitored the charging railgun, Rhea allowed herself one glance out the viewport. The KRYLL cruiser sat arrogantly at the center of their formation, shield shimmering like a mocking grin. "Let's see how that grin holds up," she muttered. The chapter ends here with tension high, the Vanguard bracing to prove humanity's resolve in the face of alien contempt. The deck plates thrummed with the rising charge of Thor's hammer. On the tactical display, the railgun's coil indicators glowed deep crimson, each bar pulsing like a heartbeat. Commander Rhea Voss stood over the console, eyes locked on the targeting hologram, a rotating wireframe of the KRYLL cruiser. "Magnetic alignment at 87%, reported Lieutenant Kieran, the gunnery officer, sweat beading on his brow despite the cool air of the bridge. "Power banks are holding steady. We'll hit full charge in 30 seconds. Rhea nodded, but her grip on the railing tightened. They had never fired Thor's hammer in live combat. One shot. That was all they had before the capacitors would need hours to recharge. One chance to prove humanity's defiance wasn't just bravado. "Commander," Captain Holt said quietly, stepping beside her. "Once we fire, Sarex will unleash hell." "He already has," she replied, voice low but steady. "The Stalwart's crew didn't get a chance to fight back. We owe them this." Holt studied her face for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. "Make it count." The KRYLL fleet remained still, their formation unbroken. On the main view screen, the enemy cruiser hovered like a predator confident of its kill. Its polished hull reflected the cold light of the distant sun, while its shield shimmered faintly, a translucent veil of blue energy. Rhea turned to the fire control station. "Kieran, adjust trajectory 5 degrees starboard. Aim for their aft shield array. It's their weakest point based on our scans." 5 degrees starboard locked, Kieran confirmed. "Bridge crew, brace for recoil," Rhea said. The railgun capacitors hit peak charge, a deep vibration rolling through the hull. Lights flickered for half a second as power rerouted to the weapon. The silence on the bridge grew heavy, broken only by the hum of the rail coils. Rhea's eyes never left the target. This was it, a test of everything they'd built, every engineering breakthrough mocked by alien condescension. "Fire," she ordered. The ship shook with the force of the shot. The railgun roared, not with sound, but with a bone-deep vibration as electromagnetic rails hurled the tungsten slug into the void. On the screen, a streak of white fire cut across the blackness of space, moving faster than the eye could track. A heartbeat later, the KRYLL cruiser's shields flared like a shattered mirror. For an instant, its glowing veil rippled violently, then collapsed. The slug punched through the vessel's side in a blinding flash, tearing a jagged hole that split the hull from midsection to stern. The explosion was silent, but the bridge crew gasped as fire and debris erupted into the void. A shock wave rippled outward, scattering fragments of alien metal and burning plasma like meteors. The KRYLL cruiser, moments ago the embodiment of alien superiority, was gone, obliterated in one strike. A stunned hush fell over the Vanguard's bridge. Kieran's hands trembled as he whispered, "Direct hit, target destroyed. One shot." The crew erupted in cheers, a raw, unrestrained sound that filled the room. Even Holt's stern face cracked into a rare smile. But Rhea didn't cheer. She stared at the wreckage, her pulse still racing. It worked, she thought, almost in disbelief. The weapon they called primitive had just shattered alien shields no energy beam could breach. "Admiral Serix is hailing us," the comms officer announced. Holt's smile faded. "Put him through." The alien admiral appeared, his scaled face twisted with fury. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship seethed with activity, officers scrambling like startled insects. "You dare!" Serix hissed. His voice, once mocking, now burned with venom. "You dare strike the Dominion with your Stone Age toys?" Rhea stepped forward, meeting his glare. "Your arrogance cost you a cruiser. We'll happily take another shot if you want to test us again." Serix's eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. "You think this victory means anything? One shot, and you celebrate like children. I will tear your ships apart piece by piece, until your kind begs for mercy." "We don't beg," Holt said calmly. "We fight." The channel cut, leaving only static. Multiple energy signatures. The sensor officer called out. "The KRYLO fleet is powering weapons. Battle stations." Holt barked. The bridge came alive with motion. Crew members strapped into their harnesses as alarms pulsed red across the decks. Rhea refocused, her fingers dancing over the tactical console. "Kieran, reload Thor's hammer with a standard slug." "How long?" 17 minutes at minimum charge," Kieran said grimly. "Too slow for this fight." "Then we use everything else," Rhea replied. "Bring rail turrets online. Prepare flak bursts for their drones." The enemy fleet moved like a wall of fire, energy lances lighting the void. The first volley struck the Vanguard's forward shields, rattling the ship with enough force to make the lights dim. "Shields at 72%, reported the system's officer. They're focusing fire on our bow." "Evasive maneuvers," Holt ordered. Pattern Delta 5. The Vanguard rolled to port, its engines screaming as it weaved between streaks of plasma. 2 escort frigates returned fire, their masked drivers launching slugs that shattered a KRYL scout vessel into fragments. The sight brought another spark of hope. Rhea worked her console with precision, calling out targets and adjusting firing arcs. "Turret 3, fire on Vector 7. Walk your shots along their flank." A rapid volley of slugs hammered into another KRYL ship, denting its shields with every impact. Their energy fields would deflect heat and plasma, but the relentless kinetic strikes made them flicker and warp. "See that?" Rhea said to Holt, a sharp edge of pride in her voice. "They can't block solid matter the way they think they can." "Not for long," Holt replied. His gaze swept the hollow display. With a KRYL flagship moved closer, its silhouette larger than anything else in the battle. "They're regrouping," Rhea said. "Serix is going to hit us with everything he has." "Then we hit harder," Holt answered. "Focus fire on their lead cruiser. Let's make them remember why we don't roll over and die." The Vanguard's guns roared again, rail slugs tearing through space with deadly precision. One of the KRYL destroyers crumbled under barrage, its glowing hull rupturing as it spiraled into nothingness. But the human fleet was taking damage too. A plasma bolt ripped across the Vanguard's port side, sending sparks cascading over the bridge. "Port shields down to 50%, shouted the systems officer. "Divert power from non-essential systems," Holt ordered. The clash of fleets raged on, neither side willing to give ground. But amidst the chaos, the crew of the Vanguard felt a shift. The first shot had changed everything. The KRYL were no longer mocking them. They were fighting for survival. Rhea gripped the console, eyes locked on the battlefield. "Load the next slug," she said, her voice like steel. "We're just getting started." The void between the fleets burned with the chaos of battle. Railgun slugs traced invisible lines of death across the darkness, shattering KRYL hulls with brutal precision. Plasma lances slashed back, each strike lighting up the shields of the Vanguard in blinding bursts of heat and radiation. Commander Rhea Voss leaned over the tactical station, her voice calm but unyielding as she issued orders. "Turret batteries. Shift fire to their port side. Focus on the cruiser with the damaged shields. Don't give it time to recover. The deck shuddered beneath her boots as another volley roared from the Vanguard's rail turrets. A second later, the KRYLO cruiser's shields collapsed in a flare of blue sparks. The ship spun wildly, its elegant design twisting into broken fragments under the relentless impacts. "Target down," Lieutenant Kieran called out, his voice clipped but tinged with satisfaction. "Good," Rhea replied. "Keep the momentum. We can't let them regroup." Admiral Serex's flagship loomed at the center of the KRYLO formation, its flanking destroyers moving in perfect unison. Their coordinated fire hammered the Vanguard's forward shields, driving them dangerously close to collapse. "Shields at 43%, reported the system's officer. "Bring us about," Captain Holt commanded. "Rhea, give me a path through that crossfire." She studied the hollow display, tracing potential routes with her fingertips. "Vector 78 by 2. It's risky, but it'll give us a clean shot at their flagship's flank." "Do it," Holt ordered. The Vanguard's engines flared, the ship rolling and accelerating hard. Beams of searing plasma cut past its hull by mere meters, but the maneuver worked. They slipped through the KRYLO formation like a blade. "Line up a shot," Holt said. "Thor's hammer is at 40% charge," Kieran reported. "We need 3 more minutes." "We don't have 3 minutes," Holt snapped. Rhea's mind raced. "Then we hit them with what we have. Target their engine arrays with the secondary railguns. Disrupt their formation." The next volley tore through the enemy line. Heavy slugs slammed into the KRYLO flagship's rear shielding, forcing it to divert power from its forward weapons. Its shimmering blue veil dimmed noticeably. "Direct impact," Rhea confirmed. "They're rerouting power to their engines, which means their offensive fire will weaken," Holt said, eyes narrowing. "Keep pressing." A voice broke through the bridge chatter, sharp with alarm. "Captain, the KRYLO are deploying drones." Rhea's gaze snapped at the display. A cloud of metallic spheres poured from the enemy ships, each one armed with pulse cannons. They swarmed like angry hornets, zigzagging toward the Vanguard's vulnerable flanks. "Point defense online," Rhea ordered. "Flak batteries. Prioritize those drones." The ship's automated cannons roared to life, filling the void with bursts of shrapnel. Explosions dotted the swarm, but dozens of drones slipped through, striking the Vanguard hull with coordinated blasts. "Port armor plating is compromised," the engineering officer shouted. "We're venting atmosphere on Deck 6. "Seal the breach," Holt barked. "Rhea, adjust flak patterns. Predictive targeting. Anticipate their evasive arcs," she replied. Kieran quickly fed her adjustments into system. The defensive grid adapted, cutting through the drones with ruthless precision. One by one, the swarm disintegrated under a storm of fire. The bridge shook violently as a plasma strike hit the Vanguard's starboard side. Sparks cascaded from the ceiling panels. The smell of scorched wiring filled the air. "Shields down to 20%, the system's officer said grimly. "We can't stay on the defensive," Rhea muttered. Her gaze locked on the flagship's image, glowing with wounded pride. "We need to break their morale." "How?" Holt asked. "Take out another of their capital ships," she said. "Hit them so hard they rethink this fight." Holt's expression hardened. "Then make it happen." Rhea's fingers danced across the console, coordinating a simultaneous barrage from every railgun the fleet had left. "All ships, concentrate fire on the lead destroyer. Synchronize your volleys with ours." We hit together, the comms officer relayed her command, and a moment later the surrounding frigates lined up their shots. A coordinated rain of slugs ripped across space, hammering the KRYL destroyer shields from multiple angles. The defensive field collapsed in seconds. "Fire everything we have," Rhea ordered. The Vanguard's guns unleashed a final, devastating volley. The KRYL destroyer cracked apart like shattered glass, its hull consumed by explosions that blossomed in eerie silence. For the first time since the battle began, the KRYL formation wavered. Their ships hesitated, their lines breaking slightly. On the view screen, Rhea saw the enemy vessels shifting to a defensive posture, clearly unsettled by the destruction of 2 of their warships. "They're scared," Kieran said, awe creeping into his tone. "We're making them retreat. Not yet, Holt cautioned. Sarex isn't finished. He's too proud for that. As if on cue, the KRYL flagship powered up its main weapon. A massive surge of energy rippled across its hull, bright enough to light the Vanguard's bridge like a false dawn. They're preparing a full-scale strike, the sensor officer reported. If that beam hits, we're finished. Rhea's pulse spiked, but her mind stayed clear. We need to blind their targeting systems. Load the magnetic mines. Holt's eyebrows rose. We've never used them against shields that strong. They don't have to break shields, she replied. They just need to scramble their sensors long enough for Thor's hammer to charge. Minutes later, the Vanguard released a cluster of magnetic mines, each one a dull sphere gliding silently through the void. When the KRYL flagship's targeting arrays locked onto them, the mines detonated with blinding bursts of electromagnetic interference. The alien ship's targeting beam flickered, its precision disrupted. Now! Rhea shouted. Charge complete. Thor's hammer's ready. Kieran confirmed, hands flying over his controls. Line up the shot, Holt ordered. The railgun's coils screamed with energy, the vibrations thrumming through every deck. Rhea's eyes locked on the targeting reticle as it hovered over the KRYL flagship's exposed flank. Fire! The slug launched, a silent spear of death crossing the void in an instant. It slammed into the enemy ship's rear shields with such force that the protective field shattered like ice. The projectile tore through the flagship's armor, leaving a trail of molten metal and venting plasma. The KRYL formation faltered, their once coordinated assault now chaotic. Sarex's voice cut through the comms, furious but shaken. Humans, this is not victory. You have merely delayed your extinction. Holt leaned forward. Tell your admiral he's welcome to test that theory again, he said, voice cold as steel. Rhea allowed herself a faint smile. We're turning the tide, she murmured. But deep down, she knew Sarex wouldn't retreat. Not yet. Something worse was coming. The wreckage of the KRYL destroyer still drifted across the void, glowing faintly as its remains spiraled into silence. On the Vanguard bridge, the crew barely had time to breathe before a fresh alarm pierced the air. Captain, the sensor officer shouted. The KRYL flagship is retargeting. Their weapons are locking on, not on us, on Trellith 9. Rhea's chest tightened. They're going after the colony. Captain Holt's face hardened, his voice cutting through the noise. Confirm their trajectory. Confirmed, the officer replied, pale. They're preparing a ground strike. Planetary coordinates match the primary settlement zone. Rhea's stomach twisted. She could picture the colony. Domes of glass and steel nestled into Trellith's rocky plains. Families who never expected war to follow them here. The KRYL weren't aiming to win a battle. They wanted to crush morale, to show humanity it could never protect its own. Open a channel, Holt ordered. Admiral Sarex appeared on the holo display, his scale face sharp with cold satisfaction. You see now the price of defiance. I will burn your colony to ash unless you surrender the system immediately. You're targeting civilians, Holt said, his voice steady but edged with anger. They are not civilians, Sarex replied. They are the roots of your infestation. Destroy the roots and the tree withers. Cut the channel, Holt snapped. He turned to Rhea. We can't let him fire. Rhea's mind raced through every tactical possibility. The Vanguard's railguns could hit the flagship again, but the weapon needed a recharge, and there wasn't time. Captain, I have an idea, she said, already pulling up a local system map. Go on, Holt said, wary but listening. There's a mineral-rich asteroid cluster 3,000 kilometers starboard. If we push one of the larger fragments onto a slingshot trajectory, we can use its mass to strike the flagship's weakened side. It'll hit harder than anything Thor's hammer could manage. That's insane, Kieran blurted. We'd have to drag an asteroid across the battlefield while under fire. It's suicide. Rhea met his gaze without flinching. It's either that or we watch Trellith 9 burn. Holt considered her words for a long moment, weighing the risk. Then his decision came, as sharp and final as the snap of a blade. Do it. Helm, adjust course toward the asteroid field. Engineering, divert maximum power to tractor systems. Yes, sir, Came the chorus of replies. The Vanguard banked hard, its engine straining as it tore toward the cluster. On the view screen, chunks of rock and ice spun lazily against the void, their jagged surfaces glittering in the faint light. Rhea scanned the field, selecting a dense, iron core fragment the size of a city block. "That one," she said, pointing, locked the tractor beams. The ship trembled as the tractor field latched onto the asteroid, pulling it out of its drift. The rock's mass was staggering, requiring every one of the Vanguard's power reserves to nudge it into motion. "Captain, KRYLL ships are repositioning," the sensor officer warned. "They know what we're doing." "Keep them off us," Holt ordered. "Rhea, how long until that rock's on a collision course?" 2 minutes to line it up," she said, hands moving with relentless focus. "But we'll be wide open until then." "Then let's make them bleed for every second," Holt said. The KRYLL fleet opened fire, streaks of plasma cutting through the darkness. The Vanguard shields flared and dimmed under the onslaught. Each impact sent tremors rolling through the decks, but the crew held their ground. "Shields down to 30%, shouted the systems officer. "Helm, roll the ship. Keep our damaged flank away from their guns," Holt commanded. The Vanguard spun gracefully, railguns blazing as they fired back. 2 escort frigates moved in close formation, absorbing hits meant for the flagship. Rhea's jaw clenched as one of them, the Resolute, took a direct plasma strike and split apart in a violent flash. "Resolute is gone," Kieran said, his voice heavy. Rhea forced herself to stay focused. Tractor field stabilized. Trajectory locked. "We're ready to launch the rock." "Do it," Holt said. The asteroid shot forward, released with a sudden burst of momentum. Using the Vanguard's engines as a final push, they flung the massive object on a precise path toward the KRYLL flagship. "Impact in 40 seconds, Rhea said. Sarex's voice cut through the comms again, filled with raw fury. "What madness is this? Do you think a rock will defeat the Dominion?" "Let's find out," Rhea muttered. The KRYLL flagship fired everything it had at the incoming asteroid. Plasma bolts burned scars across its surface, but the rock kept coming unstoppable. Smaller escort ships attempted to intercept, but their beams only chipped pieces from its surface. 20 seconds, Rhea called out. "Hold steady." The KRYLL flagship's shields flared as the asteroid slammed into them. The impact was colossal, a burst of white light engulfing the ship as its defensive barriers shattered. The asteroid tore into hull, splitting the vessel's outer plating like paper. Flames and debris erupted from the wound. "Direct hit," Kieran breathed. The KRYLL formation faltered once again. Even Sarex's flagship seemed stunned by the blow, its once sleek hull now ragged and smoking. But the Admiral's voice returned, filled with venomous resolve. "You will pay for this insult," Sarex snarled. "I will scour Trellith 9 from orbit if it costs my entire fleet." "Captain," Rhea said, her voice firm, "we need to finish this. If he fires on the colony, everything we've done means nothing." Holt turned to her, eyes cold with determination. "Then we end it here. Bring Thor's hammer to full charge. Push it beyond safety limits if you have to. We're taking that flagship out." Rhea hesitated, pushing the railgun that hard could tear the coils apart. "Then it tears apart," Holt said. "Better that than losing the colony." Engineering teams worked frantically to reroute power. The Vanguard's lights dimmed as energy flowed into the railgun's coils, the hum rising to a bone-deep vibration. Warning lights flashed on Rhea's console, but she ignored them. "Charge at 70%, Kieran reported. "We're past recommended limits already." "Keep going," Rhea ordered. Her voice was calm, but inside, her chest felt like a clenched fist. The KRYLL regrouped, their remaining cruisers forming a defensive ring around the flagship. Plasma fire cut through the void, forcing the Vanguard into evasive rolls. "We can't keep this up much longer," Holt warned. "Almost there," Rhea said. 85%. Target locked." As another blast rocked the hull, Holt gripped the armrest of his chair. "When that gun's ready, you fire. No hesitation." Rhea nodded, eyes fixed on the charging railgun display. "Understood." The chapter closes with the Vanguard battered but unbroken, the hum of Thor's hammer rising to a deadly crescendo, and Rhea's hand hovering over the fire control, knowing the next shot could decide everything. The bridge of the Vanguard felt like the heart of the storm, lights dimming and flaring as the railgun consumed every ounce of power the ship could spare. The hum of Thor's hammer grew into a deep, vibrating growl that rattled the deck beneath Rhea Voss's boots. Her hands hovered over the controls, eyes fixed on the targeting display that framed the battered KRYLL flagship. Charge at 92%. Lieutenant Kieran reported, voice hoarse. We're well past safety margins. If we hold this too long. It won't matter if we wait, Captain Holt cut in. His tone was iron. Rhea, how long until full charge? 40 seconds, she said. The words tasted like fire. Every second felt too long. The KRYLL cruisers tightened their formation, covering their flagship like a shield wall. Energy lances burned across the void, hammering the Vanguard's already weakened defenses. Shields at 15%, the system's officer shouted. We can't take much more. Hold position, Holt ordered. If we break formation now, we lose the shot. A plasma strike slammed into their starboard side. The deck lurched violently, sparks raining from an overhead conduit. Someone cried out as smoke filled the air. Rhea barely heard them. Her focus narrowed to the fire control console. Engineering reports hull breaches on Deck 7. Another voice called. Seal it, Holt said, his voice clipped but unwavering. He looked at Rhea. We either end this now or there is no later. The KRYLL flagship loomed larger on the view screen, its hull scorched and torn but still radiating menace. Admiral Serix's voice suddenly cut through the comms, cold and sharp. You believe that single weapon will save you? Humans are insects swatting at giants. I will burn your world, even if I must fall with it. Rhea's jaw tightened. Not today, she muttered under her breath. Captain, Kieran said, they're powering up their primary cannon. That beam will slice us apart if they fire first. Holt's gaze snapped at Rhea. Status of Thor's hammer? 98%. Ready on your command, she answered, steady and resolute. Line up the shot, Holt said, his voice cutting to the chaos like a blade. Rhea's fingers danced across the console, locking the targeting reticle onto a jagged breach in the KRYLL flagship's hull. Aft engine core, she said. One hit there, and the whole ship will go up. The hum of the railgun reached a deafening crescendo. The deck shook with its stored energy, warning lights flashing as the coils strained against the raw power flowing through them. Captain, the system's officer warned. Any more delay and the magnetic rails could fail. Fire, Holt ordered. The shot tore from the Vanguard like a thunderclap in silence. The tungsten slug left the barrel with such force that the ship itself shuddered backward. For a heartbeat, all sound seemed to vanish. Everyone on the bridge watching that streak of white fire crossing the void. The slug struck. The KRYLL flagship shields, already weakened, barely resisted for half a second before shattering like glass. The projectile tore straight through the hull, punching into the engine core. A flash of brilliant white engulfed the ship, and then came the explosion, an expanding bloom of fire and debris that lit the darkness like a second sun. Direct hit, Kieran said, his voice trembling with disbelief. The flagship it's gone. A stunned silence filled the bridge. On the view screen, the wreckage of the KRYLL Admiral's ship spun in all directions, fragments of molten metal scattering into the void. The remaining KRYLL cruisers hesitated, their formation breaking like ice under strain. They're retreating, the center officer said, his voice almost incredulous. The whole fleet, they're pulling back. Cheers erupted, raw and unfiltered. Officers who had stood grim and silent for hours now shouted in triumph, pounding fists against their consoles. Even Holt allowed a rare smile to break across his face. But Rhea didn't cheer. She stared at the drifting wreckage, feeling a surge of grim satisfaction. The KRYLL had mocked humanity's primitive weapons, and yet a single rail slug had ended their mightiest vessel. Status report, Holt said, his voice cutting through the celebration. Shields at 5%, the system's officer replied. Hull integrity is critical but stable. Engines are holding. And Thor's hammer? Holt asked. Kieran gave a short laugh. The coils are fried, sir. That was our last shot for a while. Then it was worth it, Holt said firmly. He turned to Rhea. You made that count, Commander. Rhea allowed herself a small, tired smile. We all did. The comms crackled. A voice from the colony governor broke through, shaking with both relief and fear. Vanguard, this is Trelith Command. We saw the explosion from the surface. Are they gone? For now, Holt said, his voice calm and steady. The KRYL fleet is in retreat. Your people are safe. Rhea exhaled slowly, the tension finally breaking from her shoulders. But beneath the relief, a question gnawed at her. The KRYL wouldn't forget this defeat. They returned angrier and better prepared. Captain, she said quietly, this was only the first test. Serex's Dominion won't take this loss lightly. Holt nodded. Then we prepare for the next one. If they come back, they'll know we're not as weak as they think. The bridge grew quieter as the crew began damage control, the adrenaline of battle fading into exhaustion. Outside, the void was littered with debris, fragments of alien steel mingling with what remained of their own fallen ships. Rhea stood by the viewport, watching the shattered remains of the flagship drift into the darkness. They thought we'd break, she said softly, almost to herself. Instead, they learned what happens when we're cornered. Holt joined her, his presence steady but heavy with unspoken thoughts. You think they'll come back? Yes, she said, but now they'll come knowing we can fight them on their own terms. That shot wasn't just about winning this battle. It told them humanity isn't prey anymore. Holt's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then let them remember it. Down in engineering, crews worked tirelessly to restore power. On the comms, messages of thanks poured in from Trelith 9. Families who had braced for annihilation now knew they'd been spared because a handful of stubborn humans had refused to surrender. As the Vanguard drifted among the wreckage, Rhea took one last look at the tactical screen. The Dominion had underestimated them. They wouldn't make that mistake again. We need better weapons, she said quietly. We'll build them, Holt replied. But for tonight, we won. Outside the viewport, the stars burned silently, indifferent witnesses to the clash. Yet in the void between them, humanity had left a mark, a promise carved in steel and fire that no empire could ignore.